remember if you remember, blah, 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 blah. Let's start over. Welcome back, travel trailer friends. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about 2026 now because the numbers are in from the RVIA, and you can look at that report anytime you want at rvia.org. If you remember last year, I said that one of the things that really surprised me was that travel trailers were in negative territory, sometimes double-digit negative territory, and that wasn't a good thing. Okay. And the other thing that we talked about is how they were taking 25 and comparing it to 24, which wasn't a good year. And 25 ended up not being a good year. And now, of course, they're going to compare 26 to 25. And the results so far would indicate to me that the RV industry is kind of crashing. So let's talk about January's numbers real quick. It's interesting because actually every single category in the towables market is in negative territory, double-digit negative territory, except for truck campers, which is in single-digit negative territory. So, you know, now you're taking, we're comparing to 25, which wasn't a great year, and already we're in negative territory. And the other thing that I think is a little surprising about this is that the CEO of the RVIA had nothing to say about the monthly results. So, and I think that's the first time I've ever seen that. So let's dig into these numbers a little bit, and I'm going to throw them up here so you can look at them. And then I did want to talk to you about, I think, a better way to measure their growth rate than what they're doing. And I said a few months ago that I would talk about this, and I think you'll find it interesting. So let's throw the numbers up on the board real quick. Keep in mind I have to read these too because I don't have that kind of a memory. So let's talk about travel trailers. They are down 13.9% compared to January of 25. Fifth wheels are down 10.8%. Folding camper trailers, which is the pop-up campers, is down 19.8%. And then truck campers, as I mentioned, is in the single-digit negatives at negative 4.6%. If we go over into motorhomes, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but they're in negative territory on the Type A's, which I think is a hangover from last year. A's were just not moving. And actually they had a lot of negatives throughout the year across all their categories, whether it was a Type A, a Type B, or a Type C. Right now, van campers are 3.5% positive compared to January of 25. And the Mini, the Type C's, are up 21.6% compared to January of 25. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this, and I say often, is that the travel trailers are really the bread and butter of the RV industry. They sell 5 times as many travel trailers as the next most popular RV, which is the fifth wheel. So when you start seeing negative numbers, double-digit negative numbers, it's not a good sign, not a good sign at all. So let's move on to the next slide here. And I want to talk briefly through these numbers, which I think you'll find somewhat interesting. If you look at 2008, that's when a really bad recession hit, and that negatively impacted the industry from 2009 all the way through 2012. And they went from producing over 300,000 a year in 2008 to averaging only 289,000 per year over the next 5 years. They started obviously digging out a little bit, but not much. Then in 2013, we saw them start to grow again, producing an average of 439,000 units a year from that period of 13 through 18. And the standout year obviously was 2017, where they produced 504,000. And then in 2018, they produced 483,000. And then in 2019, things began to take a pretty big drop. But they were just coming in then to when COVID would start to really make a mess. And the numbers went through the roof. And unfortunately, that's when quality hit an all-time low as well. And that's not to say that their previous banner year, 2017, didn't have a lot of quality complaints, because it absolutely did. And that's why, in my opinion, when you see the 5 years from 2020 to 23, which includes all those heavy-duty COVID shipments, like 600,240 in 21, and almost 493,000 in 22. That average drops to 434,093. So even with those COVID years wrapped in there, you start to see things drop, and I do believe that's because as they tapered down, there was just a lot of complaints starting, and you see that things started to drop off. Now, if you look at 23, 24, and 25 as individual years, they're in the low 300,000 numbers, and that hasn't happened since 2013 through 2015. So don't fool yourselves. They're hurting. And some of this may be due to a saturated market. I mean, when you put out twice as many trailers in a given year than you do ordinarily, the market is going to get kind of flooded. And then some of it is probably due to a bad rap on quality. And I'm not going to rule out that interest rates and gas prices haven't, had some sort of an impact also. But I think it's more informational if you look at, the 5-year averages, and you look at 2010 through 2014, and they're at 288,000. And again, that's when they were in a recession. But then, the 5 years prior to COVID, they were putting out 439,800 some units as an average per year. And then when COVID came, in the next 5 years, now they're down to 434, which includes those enormous 2 years. So there's something to be said for that, and that's a big tapering off. And now we look at 23, 24, 25, and even potentially 26, where I think I read that the RVIA thought they'd be in the mid 300s this year. I don't know. You start out this negative on shipments, and you think you're going to be, at or above where you were in 25, I find that really probably not likely. But anyway, I did want to come back and kind of talk about that. I know it's boring for a lot of people to talk about shipments, but what you should take from this is that when I said it was a buyer's market last year, I think I was right. It certainly paid off for me. And now when we look at what's happening, think about if you're interested in buying a fifth wheel, and they're in negative territory big time, that may be and for any of the towables, it may be a buyer's market now. It'll be interesting to see how the February numbers play out, and I will come back and talk about that when they come up, and then I may move to a quarterly update, because I know this isn't a super popular subject, but it's something, if you're going to be in the buyer's market, maybe you should go out to rvia.org and track it, on a monthly basis like I do, and at least give you a feel for what's happening, and certainly give you a leg to stand on if you want to negotiate. So anyway, that's it. That's it for this whole update. And until next time, happy camping.